Cube is a science fiction horror film that had two endings. One of them was leaked as a lost cut, and the person who made the movie went out of his way to make sure that all, quote, all copies were erased and doesn't talk about it much. Now, every one of you knows what happened, obviously. The more you try to suppress something, the more someone will aggressively make sure it doesn't happen. Somebody put their blood, sweat, and tears into the final scene in the movie, any movie you deal with. And when you cut it, they're going to want to keep a copy of it off of the editing room floor. We're going to review piracy in this video. Now, I'm going to bring this up as a passive subject that is not risky anymore. You're using a platform, if you're watching this on YouTube or any of the other alternates that it auto-uploads to, hopefully there's more than one this week, that has all of the technology built into it, and so does your computer and cell phone, to do all of these things now. And most of you don't participate in any of this or expend any effort for it because Netflix and chill. Or you just watch stuff and it's just monetized with advertisements. This is not a big deal. Now, I'm using Wikipedia pages or time and date stamps, not because it's authoritative, but because it at least cites what's still left of the history of this. Some of this I had to dig up from other sources, but here we go. Pirated movie history and how it could have happened to the movie The Cube, and how we got a lost ending that only a few people saw, and it should be more, in my opinion. 1985, screener promotional videos were released. Now, this has been done before, but if you were making a movie, you get investors, as the joke goes for one particularly good artist. It's doctors and dentists that'll give you the money faster than some mogul in Hollywood. Just make it as a guerrilla filmmaker. And those kind of people, maybe as bad or worse, will want a copy of the movie and say, I had it first. So you give them a copy. Now you can give them a roll of film, which is ridiculously expensive, or you wait for technology to happen to where you can hand them something they can play back on their computer or some other format. So here we go. And yes, there were screeners or promotional versions or gimme versions that were put out on really low-res stock by literally pointing a camera in a movie theater at the screen, doing the best cut you got, and making a copy of it. There's also rushes and other film work, or later on video and recording, film and video recording versions that you could splice together and make a copy of the movie that's roughly about the same thing. But anyway, screeners were listed as being 1985 and forward. These were handed out to people who were part of the Motion Picture Academy or whatever for voting purposes. But the point is, these screeners became a sub-name for every form of stolen video, because a lot of people would receive these, get a non-disclosure agreement, and ignore it and promptly make copies of it if they could, through a film lab and later on through their home computer. It's a little too tempting, and eventually you could have a really special copy with a bunch of deleted scenes that you could sell on the black market. Let's move on. 1988, the CD recordable, the burnable disc, the one that are high reliability and would work on everything as long as you did it to whatever color book standard it needed to be. And people started making two music CD sized discs, versions of the movies. What they would do is they would run it through a analog piece of equipment that would compress the video down a bit and make a lower quality version of it, and then dump it through a video capture card to a computer and store it as a 1.2 gigabyte file set. And then have authoring software figure out the scenes or transitions and then meld it together to where you had two discs. You had to change the disc midway through the movie. And some of us even got ones that were half thickness ones or double-sided ones, where you'd flip it over and it would be on the other side of the disc. It's a double-sided CD burnable. They were glue-togethers. Now, at the same time, using the same technology, you could get in Asia a full movie that was legit. That was how they released them on CDRs. It was two discs in a case, and you could watch a movie. You just had to have the newfangled 1988 multimedia compatible computers. Go look up what could do this. But anyway, by 1993, video CD became very popular in Asia as a now standardized format instead of some weird compression format that was done by analog recording. Don't get me started on how complicated this is. And yes, I've owned an audio CD that had video recorded on it because it has enough space to do it. It just turned it into a very low resolution version of the movie, but you could hand them out. It's an underground environment. But video CD in 1993, running under Windows 3.1.1, using Media Player or whatever, or program on the disc, would legit play the movie, and you could even get it to upscale it. That was a recent thing then. Video CDs in Asia were used as a distribution format because CD-ROMs that you could burn were getting cheaper. 1986, Movie CD with Motion Pixels encoder and codec came out. This was basically the same thing, and it was popularized, and it was 2 discs you'd get. In some cases, it could be 1 if it was a cartoon or some other colorful but low color content, blotchy kind of stuff like cartoons. You could put them on the discs, and that was sold with a codec that would try to keep you from stealing it. The video CDs, you could just drag all the file data over. The video CD format is just a file format. You could re-encode it on your computer and put it out in different formats. It became very amenable to stealing, but then, again, in Southeast Asia, nobody cared. Now, I'm on the Pacific Rim in Oregon. Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, and everywhere in California started seeing these flood in at about 1995. Because this, when Windows 95 and some of the other variations of it came out, along with Windows NT 4 that had 32 and or, yes, even 64-bit operating systems available. And we could use the authoring software that was almost exclusively on Macintoshes and translate it over because you could get this intermediate thing, which is a Mac hardware compatible computer that was using hardware that was now being adopted for the Macintosh that would run a version of Windows on it that you could then use as an intermediary for doing your encoding and decoding. And this became very popular in Asia as a way to author legit movies. They also would just play the movies in a theater using video projectors, a very early version of it. It'd take up less space than the 60 pounds of film I had to haul for one guy. And it became popular everywhere else because you could use, let's say, an Amiga, which was born to make movie editing, and just sit there and edit it. You're doing 2-minute video edits anyway, and string them together and then dump it to video CD format. And even if you wanted to, heavily compress it and just use a different player codec. People were writing new codecs every 2 weeks. 1997 came out. The DVD recordable came up, which meant you could copy a DVD. But no, you can't because it has that band where it keeps you from doing it. Yeah, I know all about that. You bought the cheap DVDs that didn't include the copy protection from Southeast Asia because they didn't care about it. They put out, it's just another format to burn, just like the the compact disc, the CDRs from 1988. They had a long time to perfect how to make basically a DVD version of that. And the thing is, it was just made by using very high quality version of a CD recordable. You just stuck it in a DVD burner and it just was chemically dyed a different way. They didn't care. So you'd get them off the market, you get them off the boat, literally. CDRWs, which you could rewrite, came out in 1997. The movie Cube, a science fiction horror film that had an alternate ending that the person running the project wanted to get rid of, also came out that year. But that version came out on screeners. There was people editing it when they heard that somebody was going to delete all their hard work and start over for the ending because he didn't want the outside of the cube to be seen. He's being an artiste. A bunch of other people like, I just worked on that. I just spent 3 weeks on that or whatever. I just did a set work on it. I want a copy to prove I did the work because it's part of the resume. They didn't even need the entire movie, just the scene, which means it would easily be burned onto anything they could get their hands on. Hell, stick it on a memory card, a compact flash card, whatever. Hard drive, didn't matter. Now, in 1998, this was the big year. This is when Windows 98 came out. It had mature software from Windows 95 and Windows 3.1.1 being able to import into it. And it had people like me removing all the copy protections from computers because they were intervening. There was also the rush of viruses, which meant that Motion Pixels codecs from 1996 had to be erased and replaced by law. There was a legal decision about this, and most of you don't hear about it. So a bunch of people came in and said, this is the codec I need to put on it. And it was on either a very early stick drive, which was annoying. Don't even get me started on Sony stick drives. And also on floppy disks. It would fit on a floppy. And we put it in and rip out all the code. And that Motion Pixels replacement contained video CD, DVD play, and a couple of other things for authoring, including, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Super Video CD came out with a bunch of add-ons in 1998. Then DivX, Jerome Rota, happened. He created a reverse engineered of Microsoft's MPEG-4 version 3 non-compliant MPEG compressor. It wasn't MPEG like MPEG-4, MP4, or MP3 like we use now. And DivX, he came up with, number 3.11, was able to be a reverse engineered version of it that would put out something besides some Microsoft proprietary format. And people like me and every other programmer were getting tired of all of these companies fighting over who got to control whether or not you had your computer work a year later, wanting the right to shut your machine down until you paid them another $20 for some arbitrary bullshit update. So that's the year when people started making portable versions of programs to where the operating system didn't know you were running a program. Your browser was invisible to the operating system until you ran it, and then when you shut it down, it's like, what browser? Same thing with these encoders and decoders. And also same thing now with DVD recorders, burners, DVD players, and, well, you'll hear about 1999 in a minute. But also Jerome Rota started a group using DIVX as the name, without a little smiley face at the end, starting a business of sorts, doing this sort of thing for very legitimate reasons. Remember, you could have a VCR with some old film on it, and you wanted to burn it to a disc. You didn't have to burn it to a DVD, which had been out for a while, or a CDR, which had been out for a while, or CDRW, which came out the year before. You could burn it onto any media, because this became the media wars. This is why you have flash memories and thumb drives and stuff. This was starting to have that happen. And because of that, that meant that you could sneaker net move things from one state to another easily. It also meant that it was harder for people to say, we're holding your software or your videos or your home movies hostage, including Microsoft Corporation, making it to where you had to use their products to play back this crap. Everybody hated that bullshit. And there were so many different codecs now coming out that you have a program, some of you, that is there to mesh together all the different codecs so they don't conflict with each other. The bad old days. DLL hell has nothing on codec hell. Let's move on. Now, after Jerome Rota did this thing and then started a business, the next year, DECSS came out. This happened because all the movie companies and legit companies that would put out DVDs you get use the same stinking key for encrypting them. Yeah, so once someone figured that out and figured out what key would decode it, it got leaked. I was one of those groups of people, part of the group of people that put up color bars and all sorts of creative ways to store it. I had copies of DCSS and other things stored as text files. I was a munition because I memorized it. I literally told the people at the Border Patrol people, I sent them a letter and walked in and said it to the nearest, it was actually an FBI office. I said, I am a munition because I contain this encryption format that the government says is a munition. And then I quoted it back to them verbatim and made them read it off a sheet of paper. I memorized a piece of software that would make me illegal to export to make a point. I'm not an activist, I'm an asshole. Don't get it mixed up. XVID as a company came out, or XVID as a reverse engineering of DivX came out in 2001. Reddit can't solve this mystery of how this cube science fiction horror film had an alternate ending that got released and people saw it, quote unquote, at theaters. Because theaters in Asia especially, but also on any coastline, sometimes would just put one of these disc sets, hundreds of different formats, and put them up on a projector because they didn't have a good copy. And hey, it's paying customers, and who's gonna complain? Lots of people saw these alternate versions, and I'm glad they did. I want a copy now, even though the Cube wasn't that great of a movie. It's not the pirate in me at all. It's that somebody wanted to get rid of that copy. That happens a lot with artistes. They don't want us to see their cutting room floor stuff. Now it's the best part of it. The outtakes are almost as fun as the movie. You know it, and I do. But yeah, it's not a mystery. It's people not remembering BearShare and Shariza and who knows what else out there. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with it.